Hello and welcome to Commander Runningcloud's log. In case you noticed that it took me a delay to talk, it's because I was doing a tribute to Carrie Cassidy. Carrie Cassidy always makes her audience wait long enough for you to say, is she there? Did it get started? What's happening? Where's Carrie? And then she'll say, hello? Or whatever she says. I just noticed she loved delay. So this is my third video in a row today. So this one is a continuation of motherhood reparations and public broadcasting. I just finished the last one on BRICS nations and reparations courts, and that's under the public broadcasting. And this one is not in the exopolitical diplomacy series. This one is a Commander Runningcloud log general. It's general. You know, every time I say or type exopolitical diplomacy, in my head I hear terrorism. Exopolitical terrorism. And one of the reasons that that's happening, I'm like, how come I keep thinking that it's exopolitical terrorism? That's it. That's crazy. How come I get confused every time? I never even use that term, exopolitical terrorism. Why does that keep coming into my head? Well, it keeps coming into my head, so there must be some truth in it. And when I think about the infestation of advanced, I'm not going to call it advanced technology, because I think that these bioweapons are aliens, that there are certain kinds of species of aliens, of non-Earth and perhaps Earth creatures that actually use the human body as an incubator for themselves. Just like a rotting meat attracts all kinds of microbes, and then the microbes become food for different kinds of insects, and maybe some bacteria get in there, and maybe some viruses get in there. Point being, my point is that whatever the enemies of America have used on me, starting with the Morgellons, up to now, whatever they've used on me to create the environment and the infrastructure, whatever they've used, it has consciousness, okay? It has consciousness. There's an organism in my teeth that feeds organisms in my guts, that feeds organisms in my leg. When I bother the thing living in my teeth, sometimes I can feel all over my face, like things are running out of my face. Little bugs or something are running out of my face. When I bother this thing in my teeth, I can feel my leg will start to jump as if the organisms extended throughout my body, and that the part in my leg is saying, oh no, she's hurting us, she's killing us, she's hurting us, she's killing us. And then something in my guts, right? Something in my guts. And after they locked me up in the jail was when my stomach started to swell. And I'll just repeat again and again and again, that event conflates with a supernatural event, spiritual level, that I was told to expect. And that's why it's so confusing, because I think I have both things going on at the same time. So I believe that there's an entire colony of critters inside me. And I think that these critters cause disease in other people. I think there are a lot of cancer patients that really have the infection that I have. I think there are a lot of people with other kinds of diseases. Restless leg syndrome. It's something's in your leg. Okay, now nobody wants to hear this, because I can't tell you how totally upsetting it is to me to actually be trying to relieve pressure in my teeth and find something in my gums is evading me, and then have my leg twitch. Okay? It's very, very upsetting. But I don't know, I was listening to a Farsight presentation about insectoids, and one of the remote viewers, I think it was Aziz, he described a part of the vision as a womb, and it may, and from something I've been experiencing, it makes me think that maybe those insects are inside me. You see what I'm saying? And if they're not visible in this dimension, they could actually be inside me. And I've told you how these fibers just come out of nowhere. They just appear out of nowhere. I don't know where they're coming from. Maybe I don't think they're coming out of me. I really don't think they're coming out of me. But I do feel sensations, okay? And my teeth, there's something living inside me. A colony living inside me. And I believe it might be an insectoid colony. And I find that utterly horrifying. Utterly horrifying. But when I think about it, if you think about European nationalists have been traveling the galaxies, they could have found these insects. And when Marcus put that nanobot into my ear, it could have been the queen of the hive. Could have been the queen of the hive that he put in my ear that activated the entire rest of the community. And the Morgellons that they put in my leg in 2004, when I had that spider bite, and then I thought I had defeated it, well, it seems to have created an infrastructure. This leg will still react when I bother the creatures living in my head. Well, the good news is this is getting better, which to me means that the infestation is going down. And I attribute that totally to the good ETs and their medical doctors, because I started to experience improvement right after I used my free will and my broadcasting opportunity on YouTube here to ask them to help me. So now the reason why I went through all of that is because I want them to help me again. I want them to help me with what's going on with my intestinal tract. And I want them to continue to help me with what's going on with my teeth and gums. You see, I'm kind of afraid to totally kill the thing in my gums because I think it's the only thing holding this tooth into my head. And it will react when I'm digging in there with the pin to try to dislodge them. It will actually, use its mollusk-like ability to close my tooth, or use some mind control to make me not sure exactly where I am. Like, where is this? Where am I in here? As I'm removing these things. But I just had to say that because I'm so grateful for the help that I've already gotten and the level of cure that I've already gotten. It's such a relief not to have constant pain where something was eating my skin, under my skin, coming out of my teeth. And it feels so good not to feel that pain and to have the improvement in my teeth. They're so much improved. I was at a point where I could hardly eat, and I can eat okay now. It's got moments, and when I hit this tooth wrong, and I'm afraid it'll fall out of my mouth. And because I have such significance attached to this tooth being here, if it falls out of my mouth, it's going to be a spiritual level crisis for me because of my experience with God when I was 12 and my teeth and certain promises made to me about my teeth. Okay, so this part of the conversation is supposed to be about Terrence Howard and Neil deGrasse Tyson. Okay, now everybody knows that I'm very impressed with Terrence Howard. I really enjoyed his idea that 1 × 1 = 2, because I can see that. I can see that. And because mathematics never made much sense to me, mathematics always seemed to me to be more of a set of agreed upon conventions than anything that was actually real. And I don't know why. I guess because I am very word oriented and very much about filling in the blanks. And I've met so few mathematicians that are able to actually explain what they do and put it into words, which makes me think that they think symbolically and they're not necessarily discovering new things as much as they are just being symbolic and arbitrary at times with arbitrary rules. Like, let's all agree this. Okay, let's all agree this. Now let's build a house on what we agreed. Okay, let's build a house on what we agreed. But it's nothing real to me. Okay? However, when I first read, I read the first half of Terrence Howard's book. I have not read the quantum physics part of the book yet, but I look forward to doing it. The only reason I haven't done it is because I am exhausted a lot of the time. I'm tired. I'm dealing with the depression of living here, and I have so much of my own work to do. When I'm not actually broadcasting, I'm usually researching. Not for a broadcast, just because I research. That's what I do. Wait a minute. Something happened on my computer. All the lights changed. Oh, it's 6:20 in the morning. It could have gone on daytime. Well, I hope everything's okay on my computer. Anyway, Terrence Howard. Not only did he do this I'm let me categorize 4 of the things I learned in the first part of his book. I learned a new way to think about math, right? That 1 times 1 equals 2. Because you already have 1. So 1, it's already there. Times 1 is 2. Because it's 2, right? But it kind of falls apart when you do 1 times 2. Because 1 times 2 is also 2. So you can't have 1 times 1 equaling 2 and 1 times 2 equaling 2, because then 1 times 1 and 1 times 2 become the same, which means that 1 has to be so unique. I don't know. 1 times 1. No, you have to be able to think that 1 times 1 isn't 2, because the 1 is not represented in the product. The 1 is just like a tool to manipulate the thing that is the number. But it doesn't matter that much because of the other things he brought up. Now, the reason why I reconsidered that is because Neil deGrasse Tyson challenged Terrence Howard's work so emphatically and so completely. Neil deGrasse Tyson had so many objections to Terrence Howard's work that in the first 2 pages, just the introduction, I didn't even watch him talk long enough for him to get into the actual meat of the book, because Neil pulled out his red pen as soon as he saw the title, it seems. Now, I remember when I was at Yale University as a graduate student, and Vera Kuczynski, a Berliner or a Polish European in the African American Studies program, as an authority and a gatekeeper, the woman who actually told comparative literature not to let me into the doctorate after they made the decision to let me into the doctorate. She made an objection to that. The woman who I kicked off my committee because she wanted me to slave for her during the summer, she said, after the class I was in, she started a special seminar group, hoping I would join it, and then had a summer group and asked me to join it because I enriched her so much. She said she had never had a class as wonderful and productive as the class I was in. Her friend Sabine from Germany told me this during a party that Vera had at the end of the semester. Sabine told me, she said, Vera, is so happy with your class. She says that your class is the best class she's ever had. And that's because of me. I was the one who spoke every class. I was the one who Vera would say, I think that's very simplistic, with her masculine German accent. She would tell me that everything I said was simplistic till I'm sitting in the classroom crying. But every simplistic thing I said became a source of conversation for everybody in the class. And she didn't generate many discussions or conversations. People used to come back half an hour later to comment on something I had said a half an hour before, because they had been thinking about it the whole time. I was an idea generator, and Vera hated me for it. So when I handed Vera one of my papers, she complained starting at the title page, and there were red marks all through the paper. She didn't even read it. She would put a criticism, and then I had addressed whatever it was on the next page. The next page, I'm telling her the answer to her complaint, because she just wanted to fill my paper up with criticism. Well, as soon as I saw Neil deGrasse show Terrence Howard's paper, and I listened to all of his petty comments and misunderstandings and superficial interpretations, I said, ooh, Neil deGrasse Tyson sounds exactly like Vera. And Vera was jealous. But I still thought about challenging and looking again. Because Neil deGrasse Tyson made me feel stupid for believing in Terrence Howard, because Neil deGrasse Tyson has credentials. Yeah, the Europeans gave him credentials. But then I started to think about that. I said, yeah, but what did Neil deGrasse Tyson actually contribute to the body of knowledge? Did he actually ever think of anything original? I mean, when I see him on TV and I see him talking, he always comes off more like a comedian than a scholar. He's more kind of jokey, than he is intellectual or scholarly. And I was trying to think, I was saying, you know what? Neil deGrasse Tyson has not really created any original thoughts or ideas. I mean, I haven't heard of any. I don't remember him creating any groundbreaking intellectual discoveries. I also don't remember him actually contributing much to public education in his field. Does he go around to high schools giving talks? Does he tour the cities giving talks? No, he's just a jokey guy. Right? So I think, didn't they make him the head of a planetarium? Did he increase the number of Americans that visit the planetarium? I don't think so, right? So we have to sort of look at Neil deGrasse Tyson the way we look at all the other public intellectual Black people that the academies put their seal on, like Henry Louis Gates, like Cornel West. Cornel West talks a lot and he says a lot of great stuff, but Cornel West never comes to the bat for Black people. I mean, he reminds me a lot of Frederick Douglass, and he says some great stuff, but Cornel West has never really fought for Black people. He certainly didn't join me or support me, and I'm sure I notified him about my situation. And he had been at Harvard. Harvard accepted him. And then I think about that other guy, Mike Tyson. Is that his name? None of them have achieved public prominence, standing up for reparations. None of them have made incredible finds in their fields, but Terrence Howard did. In fact, Neil deGrasse Tyson actually made a comment about, in the introduction, this is just the introduction. Terrence Howard talks about his intellectual predecessor, Tesla. And rather than deal with any of the subsequent ideas that Howard actually presents, Neil stops there and starts talking about, Tesla, but Tesla ideas were accepted and some of his ideas were absurd. And you're like, when Tesla first presented his ideas, they weren't accepted. right? And Terrence Howard was trying to make the point, and ironically, Neil reacted exactly the way the paragraph said: established, credentialed, establishment thinkers act. He shut him down, wholesale shut him down. He didn't do what I did. You see, I said, well, might have a problem with that 1 times 1 equals 2. I love the way it sounds. I love the way it clicks in my head. It clicks in my head like, yeah, it makes sense. But when I go to 1 times 2 equals 2, and then I think, well, they both can't equal 2, right? And then I say, oh, the 1, the multiplier, is a tool. It's not actually a part of the equation. The multiplier is the tool that you use on the number, but the number is separate from the tool. So it looks like 1 equals 1, but it depends on the context of the 1, you see? And that's literary, the context of the 1. That if the 1 is a tool and this 1 is not a tool but a number, then you apply the tool to the number and you don't have each one equal, right? You don't have the tool equal to the number, to the tool equal to the machine. However, that might be flawed, okay? But the square root argument, I don't think is flawed. Now, I don't understand why he cubes instead of squares, considering, I don't know why he cubes. But I think that it is very important to show that irrational numbers don't have a place in a logical universe. Okay? So I still admire that. But what's even better, and see, Neil did not go through the work and try to find what was redeeming about the work and build on that and encourage. Neil came in with his red pen. Neil had his red pen ready to correct the title almost, right? And then he shows everybody on the YouTube, how many comments he made, like he took it real seriously. But then he makes a comment about the introduction that's, it seemed like what Vera did to me. Jealous, because Neil did not do anything original or exciting. And he sees the original and exciting ideas in Terrence Howard. Because when Terrence Howard starts to talk about negative space and to define negative space, like these spaces between the circles in the tree of life, I'm sorry, but that's land breaking. When Terrence says that in addition to thinking 2-dimensionally about mathematics and engineering, we need to actually come out the box thinking 3 dimensions, right? I'm sorry, but that's just revolutionary and land breaking. When Terrence starts to talk about money and dividing money and how dividing money is counterintuitive to increase, I'm sorry, but that blows that's a home run. That's a home run, right? So I don't even know what he did in quantum physics. I just know that Terrence Howard produced some work that is different, exciting, mentally stimulating. And Neil is such a tool of European nationalist racism that he didn't even consider the real ideas being presented. He got hung up on the semantics. Just like Vera. Vera couldn't wait to attack my work on paper, just like she attacked my work in person. She didn't want to find anything redeeming about me. She didn't want to do the work. You know what she said about Leon Forrest? The most prolific American writer of his age, who's been totally suppressed because of people like Hazel Carby and other European nationalists in university literature departments, and the MLA's failure to put American literature at the center of their discourse and preferring foreign literatures instead. Yeah, the MLA should be sued in the International Court of Reparations as well. You want to know what Vera said on my committee? Now, I've been waiting 2 years to get my degree through, and it's a 2-year program, and I have to go a whole extra year because this is what Vera said when I asked her, we're at the end of the second year, and we're going into summer, and I'm trying to get my freaking master's degree. 2-year master's degree. 2 years. Because the Europeans want to marginalize Black American literature, and they want to make the credentials inadequate for employment. Inadequate. Master's degree, you can't get a job with a master's degree. You need a doctorate. But they didn't even offer the doctorate when I was there in 1993. And I was supposed to finish in 1992, but the advisors refused to read my work. Hazel would be gone to Australia to help murder Indigenous people there with her cultural repression before the summer was even over. Before exams were even over, Hazel was gone, instead of working for the graduate students who waited all year, teaching and studying and taking classes, waiting all year for the professors to have time for them, and Hazel would be gone. So I'm trying to get out of there, but no one will read my work, which is actually how they got rid of me at University of Massachusetts. And when I meet Vera on the stairs and I say to her, have you read the book yet? Can we talk about it? She told me in her German accent that she found Leon Forrest incredibly boring, and she had not read the book. And it was a skinny book too. Blood Orphans was a fat book. Okay, maybe 250 pages, average size of a novel, maybe a little fatter. But she told me that she didn't read the work for my thesis because she found the author boring. You want to know why Vera found Leon Forrest boring? Because Leon Forrest's knowledge of Black American culture is so intense that I needed 2 years just to follow his references so that I could have a deeper understanding of the allusions that he made to other literature, including Greek mythology, the story of Odysseus, including the Bible. I had to work my way through the Bible, which I had never been able to read before because it has so much irrelevant material. You know how me personally, if it doesn't make sense, you know what I'm saying? And if you're reading the Bible and you see all these sons of their griot level genealogies, right? Who do I care? What do I care who was the father of who and who was the son of who way back in the when? I just want to know what they got to say, right? So by the time you get to the good part of the Bible, which might be the commandments of Moses, you've gone through a lot of other stuff. You've heard about how wrathful and cruel God is. You've heard about God smiting this guy and smiting that guy. You've heard so much bad stuff about God in the Old Testament that by the time you actually get to Moses, you're just sick of God. You're just sick of God because he's so mean and nasty. And then Jesus comes and things start to lighten up, right? They start to lighten up and you get into all that New Testament. But before that, you get the Song of Solomon. That wasn't so bad. Those are love poems. The love poems weren't so bad. But reading the Bible was hard for me because there's so much of it was irrelevant to anything, boring, and I did not understand any kind of context to use to interpret what I was reading. I don't care about your genealogy, right? So because I'm reading Leon Forrest and trying to do literary criticism on him, I'm trying to understand him. And Leon Forrest was so well read and so widely read. I mean, he was making references to Dostoevsky's War and Punishment, but there was Crime and Punishment. But there was no way I was going to read that book. I mean, forget it. I'm not going to read that. I'm not going to read it. But it was one of Leon Forrest's major influences. So that means if you've read Crime and Punishment, you will see a lot of allusions to it. But Forrest also liked James Joyce, Ulysses in particular. Well, I read that book. I read that book in college. But in order to catch up, I read James Joyce short stories as a part of my thesis bibliography for Leon Forrest, so I could understand why he liked James Joyce. And I figured that out, right? So I had to make a reading list based on Leon Forrest, right? And you had to know about Black culture, like the barbershop, like the Black newspaper before it got corrupted, right? I know Cornel West reminds me so much of the publisher of the first American newspaper, Frederick Douglass. Yeah, Cornel West reminds me so much of Frederick Douglass. He really does. He really does. I have a love-hate with him, though, because I don't know. I just think he could have done more, than building alliances. He did a lot of work building alliances between the World War II refugees and the American indigenous community. And I guess I'm very grateful for that, but it took him away from helping me, right? So when I see what Neil has to say about Terrence, I feel that Neil really should have read the whole book before he took out his red pen, because he might have found the conversation about money to be incredibly interesting. He might have found the conversation about the topology of negative space. I don't know if I said that right, but space that is considered empty. If you create configurations for it, it's something fascinating appears. And his challenges to Euclidean geometry. I think I said that right. Okay, but Tyson didn't look at any of that, and that's the meat of the subject. When I watched his video, I don't have all day, right? And I'm looking at 10 minutes go by where all he's doing is attacking the superfluous details in great detail. I mean, he's really getting off on himself, right? But he's not addressing the conversation. He's going off in intellectualism. And then he's kind of appealing to other intellectuals, right? Using their language of referential thinking. And I'm thinking, wow, what a tool. He's as much of a tool as Henry Louis Gates and Michael Tyson, the king of literature rap, right? And Robert Steptoe. I mean, I got a list of them, and Valerie Smith and Brent Hayes Edwards. They're all part of the machine. That's why they got jobs in the machine, which is exactly what Terrence Howard was saying, right? And interestingly enough, one of the most important reasons why those gentlemen are not able to come up with original thoughts and only shoot down other people's thoughts or steal them is because they're suitable for the institutions of higher education controlled by European nationalism. Their minds are weak. They believe what they're told, and they don't have any kind of moral compunction about representing their own people. So, of course, they're not going to create new knowledge all on their own, not novel new knowledge that goes against convention. Of course, they're going to defend conventions. That's how they reach their success. That's how they reach their success. So I'm kind of annoyed at Tyson because I find Howard to be very exciting, intellectually thrilling, in fact. I mean, his work just lit a fire in me. And while I might challenge things when I think about them deeper, the point is he got me to think about it, right? I'd been scared off math from one lousy, inarticulate teacher after another. It was only when I went to Northwestern Law School that I met a teacher. I'm not Northwestern Night School Continuing Education in downtown Chicago on the North Michigan Avenue. I went there so I could get credentials to understand computer programming and get a job in computer programming from a literature degree. And while I was at Northwestern, for the first time in my life, I met a professor who could actually teach mathematics because he could talk. He could speak American. He could speak the language, and he could explain what he did. And I needed to understand. You can't just put a whole bunch of symbols on the wall and think I'm going to know what you're talking about. I don't speak symbols. I speak words. It's my orientation. I'm a novelist, a writer, an author. I'm word oriented. So if you're going to put a bunch of numbers up and have me make sense of it, you're going to have to do some explaining about what those numbers mean. You're going to have to create number sentences. And Terrence Howard did that. Terrence Howard created number sentences. But if Tyson had a problem, with some of the math, why didn't he deal with it directly instead of just discounting Howard outright like that, being so dismissive like that, acting so threatened like that, acting so unprofessional like that? It just reminded me of all my unpleasant experiences with people like that. Black Americans in the academy that just shoot down other Black people bringing greatness, because those Black people in the academy work for and for the benefit of the European nationalist economic war machine. Well, this idea of having experts to validate knowledge creates quite a monkey wrench in our intellectual development. When you're reading a book, you don't have anybody telling you what to think or what to make of it, right? But if you've got mind control as one of your operatives in the public space in the university, when you come into the classroom with your own thoughts about it, and the professor is a part of the indoctrination, the professor is going to say, this is what you need to say on the test. This is what you need to say on the test. And I don't care what you think the truth is. Because if you don't say what I want you to say, I'm not going to give you the grade. One of the biggest problems I had when I was teaching university was the students would say, yes, but what do you want us to say? What's the answer? And I would have to tell them, this is a literature course. Your reactions to the literature are personal. What I want you to say is what you think. I don't have an answer except what you think. And that would frustrate my students so much because they thought I might be like Maria Tomashko. Now, Maria Tomashko said, if the student does not repeat exactly the definition that I gave, I want you to mark the question wrong. And those were the instructions she gave us for grading. And she didn't give us those instructions for grading until just before the test. So we couldn't warn the students. And a lot of them crapped out of the first exam they got. And that's how we were able to make the curve work. Because by the time they caught on that this was a memorization course, not a thinking course, and you better memorize Maria's definitions or you're not going to get credit for the question. It took, a lot of them fell like flies at the first test, and that was her trap. So she could have a curve. Because she didn't even tell us, the TAs, until it was too late to save the students. And then she said, if they don't have this verbatim, they get it wrong. And her definitions, they weren't even good, but they had to know the right definitions. So she wasn't about interpreting and thinking, critical thinking. She was about do what I say, or get an F. Do what I say, or you get no credit. So she is successful because she indoctrinates the students to repeat what they've been told without any opinion, without any correction, without any advancement. Repeat what you are told. But I always told my students, I can't tell you the right answer, Your grade will come in, your writing. How do you write it? But I can't tell you what to write because I'm looking for your reactions, your responses. What is this book teaching you? What's it doing for you? What are you learning from this book? How did the author achieve that? So when you talk about experts and validating knowledge, you're talking about one of the ways that European nationalism took control of the minds of the smartest people in America. A lot of the people that went to institutions of higher learning were taught, don't question it, just give it back the way you got it. So they're taught not to think too much, not to challenge the system too much. Well, experts are the ones that we look to guide us forward. Experts are the ones who know the answers, right? And because of the style of news reporting that we have and the way they want you to do as you're told, they have created a role for experts that should not exist in a democracy. In a democracy, an expert should just be a source of advice, not a source for decision making, right? We should all be able to come up with our thoughts by ourselves. So when new ideas are challenged, like Terrence Howard's new ideas are being challenged, instead of people trying to understand what the thinker is presenting, then we all fall down. Because if we could rise to understand what Terrence Howard is explaining, we might find some flaws, but we would find so much to our advantage, so much new territory of thought, new ideas for us to expand our thinking. Because if I were Neil deGrasse Tyson, I would have started with the money and how banking and accounting can use these formulas to their own advantage. That when you put, well, I'm not going to go through it because I didn't memorize it. Okay, so when you have experts and they come from a centralized point of view, and they reject knowledge from superior thinkers, and they reject knowledge that does not fall in line with the party line that they've been commanded to respect, then you get an opening for lies, propaganda, and influence. And when you reach the point in your society where thinkers are not allowed to say, I don't think that happened, because the proof isn't there, and then they get shut down by a centralized court system, and the newspaper people start attacking them. And when you have anybody in the society whatsoever who says, I think genocide of Arabs is wrong, and they lose their jobs, then you've got a society where influence has taken the place of democracy, where influencers will tell you what the party line is, tell you what to think, tell you what your politics are, and you better not go against it, right? I mean, if all those hippies, older than me, senior citizens now, if they went back on their youthful beliefs and said, we don't believe in war, so we're sick to death of hearing about the Europeans warring in Europe, we're Americans, and we're hippies, and we don't like it, and we want you to quit, well, NPR would have shut up, right? But instead of the people influencing the politicians and the public broadcasters and the politicians enforce their will on the people. And that's called fascism, if you're in Europe. In America, we call that anti-American. That's anti-American. Mind control, influencing to the point of oppression. One point of view, constantly drummed into our heads until we believe it. If you tell a lie many times, people will start to believe it. If you tell a lie, people will still include it as a part of the truth because it could be. It could be. Woke is a word that was created on the Tom Joyner Morning Show by Tom Joyner and his co-host, Sybil Wilkes. Tom and Sybil would use the word woke as a euphemism for exposing European nationalist racism through personal experience. When someone had a personal experience with European national racism and they understood what it was, that's when Tom and Sybil would say woke. Okay? It meant that your eyes are not closed to racism. You see, it wasn't you. It wasn't you. It wasn't your fault. You didn't do it. It was the European nationalists that are framing all of this to your destruction and your dismay and your economic pain. That's where that's coming from. It's coming from there, and that's being woke. Well, once the European nationalist broadcasters discovered that American people were talking in a code, they took over the word woke and started using it to describe anything they didn't like. They used the word woke with other ambiguous words like left and right. And I still don't know what that means. Conservative and liberal. I still don't know what that means, because all of it means European nationalist thinking and racism. All those terms. So they started to poison the word woke so they could cripple our vocabulary so we couldn't create influence amongst ourselves. We couldn't have a language amongst ourselves. So while they had plenty of code languages like national security, which means a threat to European nationalism, not a threat to Americans. I'm an American. Nobody in public broadcasting in the European nationalist judicial system or the European national government controlling America, none of them care about the injustices against me, the violations of human rights against me, the bioweapons inside me right now, this moment, deployed by them to make sure that I don't get my inheritance, that my children don't get my inheritance, to make sure that I'm robbed and left suffering and in despair and alone and old and poor. And nobody in America can hear me. And I'm an authentic multi-generation, never known any place else in my family for generations. Yeah, we got some Europeans, and they came in at the same time as a part of a strategy. In their land control strategy, they started mating with the owners of the land so they could ease us out of our own country, our own communities. Don't you think that's what Martin Edwards did? Martin Edwards moved right next door to Mary Deck. We were Indians there. Mary Deck's an Indian. And what does he do? He gets her pregnant and then abandons the family. Bose hated his father, the white man. He hated him. He told my grandfather that his own father was a reprobate. That's the word, reprobate. And he moved to Oklahoma. He had to leave home because his father was stealing all the land. So this Europeans marrying into the American families and the Black Indian tribes, because in Texas, Walter Muller married my grandmother, a Texan, a native Texan. And the next thing you know, they're leaving Texas. And the German Jew, grandpa, has the land. So they used miscegenation, as they called it. They used intermarriage as a way to get into the land. And they came in at the same generation in my family. Well, okay. Woke. Stolen word used to cripple intra-racial conversations. In the urban dialogue, woke had a certain meaning. When the Europeans caught on, they dragged woke out of its context and trashed it. Made it a definition that was negative, made it a definition that was talking about ambiguities, always in a negative context, and completely deprived us of the ability to say woke as a euphemism for a deliberate act of sabotage from European nationalists. Rules of law versus organic knowing and conscience. A part of the European language in America that is anti-American is rule of law. This is something that George Bush Sr. brought in when he was bringing in those Patriot Acts to legitimize surveillance on the American people so that he could go in and murder and kill Arabs. He wanted to get some Arabs dead and use his military force to kill some Arabs. So he made sure that none of those hippies would be able to protest. There weren't going to be any public protests, not like with the Vietnam War when they first tried the police to make the people stop believing that they knew what right from wrong, to make the people believe that stealing for assets was perfectly okay. Stealing so you can grow drugs and smuggle drugs is perfectly okay. Stealing and murdering, perfectly okay, and you better not say anything about it. And now we're going to make you get in the military so you're going to be a part of it. Isn't that exactly what George Bush did with the Patriot Acts? He did it, and now we're seeing it happen to Alex Jones and the January 6th, right? A fake election? How dare you say that? We're going to put you all in jail, and then we're going to talk about it on NPR and PBS like you deserve it for the next 5 years to make sure that everybody else shuts up. We're going to make examples out of you for public speak, for standing up against civil rights violations, for standing up against crime. We're going to punish you using our criminal justice system. Isn't that what they're doing? Twisting everything. And you would think that public radio would be talking about it, right? You would think that Neil deGrasse Tyson would be talking about it. You'd think that Henry Louis Gates would be talking about it. You'd think that Cornel West. Oh, I think Cornel West is talking about it. The next bullet point is Walt Disney versus Wernher von Braun. When I was growing up, Walt Disney had a character named Jiminy Cricket. And Jiminy Cricket had a song about your conscience and letting your conscience be your guide. Because they knew that it was good to reinforce good morality in children. So every Sunday night, before Ed Sullivan's variety show came on, which could be good or bad, usually boring, and Ed Sullivan had an accent, an Eastern European accent, or Lithuanian, or some kind of weird accent, and he was extremely unattractive, but he made immigrants feel comfortable with themselves, like Lawrence Welk did. Lawrence Welk made a lot of Polish people in America feel good. They felt integrated within the American community because the television had their community on. And the rest of us got to learn the polka. So we didn't mind. We didn't mind when the Polish took the Lawrence Welk show, or when Ed Sullivan got his variety show. And sometimes Ed Sullivan would even have an artist like Dionne Warwick on, or the Supremes, or James Brown. So sometimes Americans were represented. Hawaiian hula dancers. I think I saw Hawaiian hula dancers for the first time on Ed Sullivan. And that's when I realized I wanted to be a dancer, that I loved ballet and I loved dance. And I would do for my mother and father. I would, I was a little kid, I'd say, watch me dance. And I'd do the hula dance that I saw probably on Ed Sullivan. Walt Disney was a wonderful show for children. They had wholesome shows with good moral lessons. They had educational shows. They had wonderful shows. And I was shocked to find out recently that Wernher von Braun came on Walt Disney promoting NASA, which is kind of ironic considering how nobody in my family could get a job at NASA. And nobody in my family very few people in my family were going to get a world-class education that would make them qualified for NASA, because by then we were all living in a ghetto because the World War II refugees had already brought the ghetto. Wernher von Braun had already brought the ghetto to me So I don't remember him being on Walt Disney recruiting for NASA. But then people started to say that Walt Disney was a Nazi and that Walt Disneyland was a child trafficking depot. And then Brooke Shields said that she gets sick of Michael Jackson because he always wants to go to Disneyland. And then they say Michael Jackson is a pedophile. And you start to put all this together. But my problem is the way that they discredited Walt Disney. And people said, oh, look, there are sex organs on this cartoon. They were doing subliminal sex for children. Well, here's what I know. Walt Disney had a lot of integrity, and Walt Disney cared a lot about children. And if he attracted a lot of children, that is what brought the bad people to him, forcing him to participate with them. Because I don't care what anybody says, I learned wonderful things with Walt Disney. I loved his morality. Some of the songs, High Hopes, you got high hopes, he got high hopes, he had high apple pie in the sky. So anytime you're feeling low, okay? Instead of letting go, just remember that ant. And he had Jiminy Cricket. He had Jiminy Cricket be the conscience for the Pinocchio cartoon. And then he had Jiminy Cricket as a co-host of his show. And Jiminy Cricket would always remind people to pay attention to their conscience. Well, our consciences tell us that murdering other races of people for their stuff is killing and stealing. And even Moses in the Bible says killing and stealing is wrong, right? Oh, yeah, I told you that I didn't read the book of Genesis until I'm doing work with Leon Forrest. And once I read the book of Genesis, I find out that Adam and Eve were not the first human beings. There were other human beings there. And then I find out that there's some guy named Jacob, who might be a son of Cain or Abel, I don't know. But he ends up being a crooked thief who cheats a landowner with a flock of sheep out of his sheep by using his knowledge of genetics and math, which obviously the shepherd did not have. Because in the book of Genesis, the family that launches the biblical stories, the chosen people in the book of Genesis, they start with this guy Jacob who cheats his brother Esau. His brother Esau stays home and takes care of the family. And because this other one, I think his name is Jacob, but I'm not sure, he's the second son, so he's not the heir. He's the second son, because the first son was the heir. Second son is taken care of by the first son. To be the heir meant that you are the administrator of the family estate and you take care of everybody in your family. That's what it meant to be the heir. It didn't mean you get to keep everything for yourself. It meant that you're the one responsible for responding to the needs of your family. So Jacob, being the second son, he goes off and he works for somebody already existing. Okay? Adam and Eve did not repopulate the whole world, and then the siblings created the third generation, and it wasn't family business. They actually went out, and there were other families already existing. So all those genealogies in the Bible, they're just about Adam and Eve's family. And Adam and Eve's family were crooks and murderers. Cain and Abel, they're brothers that killed, they murdered. One of the brothers murdered the other brother. And the murderer has children. And the children are thieves. You see? And then some guy decides that the whole world needs to get this book. So I guess so we know what's coming. So we know that we've got a lot of murderers and thieves from old days coming for us. And they had a lot of children. Just look at all those names. And they all come from murdering thieves. Because Jacob cheated his brother out of his inheritance. You've heard about You traded your inheritance for a bowl of soup. Well, Jacob goes abroad to work. And while he's there, he makes a deal with the landowner, right? Like a deal for Manhattan. He says to the landowner, he says, I'll tell you what, instead of paying me, why don't we do this? I'll marry both your daughters because I'm that kind of guy. I want my cousins, brothers, and sisters. Yeah, I want my children to be cousins and siblings. Have siblings, okay? So since I don't want your ugly daughter, but she's the oldest, so I have to take her. I really want your pretty daughter, the youngest. So I'll just take them both. I'll just corrupt both of them. I'll just give them both babies, and both of them will have to serve me. Okay? And then he says, and now the next thing I'm going to do for you, landowner, is that you got some white sheep and you got some black sheep. I'm going to make a deal with you. Every white sheep that's born belongs to you. And every black sheep that's born belongs to me. Because you see, Jacob knew that black is a dominant gene, that there will be more black sheep because the black gene dominates the white gene. That if you have a black lamb and a white lamb mating, the babies will mostly be black. But if you have a white lamb and a white lamb mating, the baby will be white. But once you already have the population growing exponentially among the black sheep, the white sheep get fewer and fewer and fewer. So when Jacob left his employer after 7 years, he left with more sheep than the owner had, and he left with the 2 daughters. And then he goes home. And when he goes home, his brother is still in charge of the agriculture and still in charge of the family. So his brother goes out and works the fields every single day and tours the land every single day. And when he gets through, he's tired. So one day the brother Esau comes home and he's just tired, exhausted, and starving. And his brother Jacob says, listen, I made this big pot of soup. He called it pottage. I made this big pot of pottage. I'll give you some if you give me, your inheritance. And the brother Esau said, okay, right? Because he probably doesn't know what the guy's talking about. He's tired. He's hungry. He probably doesn't even think that this guy is serious. But he doesn't know what he's talking about. And who knows what words Jacob really used. So Esau eats the pottage. Okay, and that makes Jacob think he has license now. But he still doesn't tell Esau what's going on. What Jacob does is his father's sick in bed and he's blind. And Esau has thick hair on his hands. He's got curly hair on his hands. But Jacob has plain hands, hairless hands. So when Jacob goes in to see his dying blind father, he pretends to be Esau by putting a pelt of hair on his hand. So when his father feels the hair on his hand, he thinks he's talking to Esau, and he verbally gives his last will and testament and endows Esau with his estate, but he's talking to Jacob. So Jacob says, it's mine. It's all mine. Dad gave it to me. It's mine. I'm the one who was there. He was holding my hand. He bestowed the wealth on me. And Esau had to leave. And nobody knows where he went because he wasn't in the Bible anymore, right? And the rest of the Bible is about Jacob's people. So you got Cain, who kills his own brother, which reminds me just so much of my brother, Andre Martin Tapetti. And then you got then you got Jacob, who cheats his brother out of his inheritance. Oh my goodness, that reminds me of my sister and brother, Andre Martin Tapetti. Right? So they set the precedent. They said, this is the culture that we're bringing you with the Bible, right? And I guess a lot of people didn't like it, so then they bring Jesus in. And they wrote these stories about Jesus. And they say, oh, Jesus is love, Jesus is love. But I look around me at all these Europeans that claim to be Christians. I look around at the Church of the Latter-day Saints of Jesus Christ. I look at all these people and it makes me think about what I know about Jesus. And it makes me think, well, other people don't know what I know about Jesus. Because if they knew what I knew about Jesus, they would understand why the church is so corrupt, why the church does evil things. I don't know if you saw Lorde, Lourde, Miss Lorde does celebrity biographies, and she did a celebrity biography of Mother Teresa. And in her biography of Mother Teresa, she talks about how Mother Teresa influenced the downfall of Haiti, of Baby Doc Haiti. The Baby Doc Haiti's wife donated generously to Mother Teresa, but Mother Teresa actually brought the Pope to Haiti, and they used their influence to tear the Haitian government to pieces. Other people challenged Mother Teresa for sending all of her money to the Vatican in Italy instead of using it to actually help poor people. That people ended up poor. And then Miss Lorde, also Lourde, I think is her name. But you can find her. She does a lot of celebrity biographies. So just enter in any celebrity's name, and Lorde will probably come up. And she also mentioned that Mother Teresa believed that people should suffer. So she gave people inadequate pain meds and inadequate treatment because she enjoyed the suffering, the crucifixion. She liked to see people crucified, right? So that's, you have to look at the Bible for what it is, not what it's supposed to be. It's like the UN and National Public Radio and public broadcasting system. It has a name and a reputation that stands in idealism and goodness, but the true function is truly evil. So the Vatican controlled knowledge and executed people with novel, new, exciting thoughts. People were afraid to think outside the box. They were afraid of the Inquisition that repressed unique thinkers who could break out of the boxes of authoritarianism. They had heresy. And isn't that exactly what Neil deGrasse Tyson is doing to Terrence Howard? Acting like a Vatican, declaring Terrence to be a heretic, and then dismissing him like that without looking for the value and looking to be encouraging like a real professor should? I think so. So Walt Disney being associated with Wernher von Braun, and we know Walt Disney taught people very, very good things. And no matter how much dirt they want to pour upon his reputation at this point, and I was believing it and I was feeling conflicted, but then I realized, I said, but wait, I know what Walt Disney did for me. Let's do some reverse engineering on it. Let's reverse engineer this. And when I reverse engineer it, I think, oh my goodness, Walt Disney taught good things to children. He taught children to do their chores. He taught children to want chores. He taught people not to lie, not to cheat. He taught science. He had cartoons that were delightful and heartwarming, movies that he would see, and they were always within the innocence of children. He didn't violate the innocence of children. So now when I read, Wernher von Braun was there and got on his show, and on Walt Disney's show, Wernher von Braun is holding that rocket ship like this, the same way Elon Musk holds the rocket ship, the very, very same way. And I think about Wernher von Braun being on Walt Disney with his German accent and his Operation Paperclip reputation and all the evil resident in Wernher von Braun. And I see Wernher von Braun coming on Walt Disney as an advance warning. You know what I mean? An advanced warning. Just like Daughters of the Dust was a very popular movie before the Europeans moved in to genocide the Geechee people and steal all their land, right? I mean, there are probably still some Geechee people alive. I know there was one on YouTube who was working with the Europeans. So there might still be some Gullah Island people alive. But for the most part, the Europeans took over that territory, right on the coastline, on the ocean. But before they really close in, there's a movie about it. And you'll see this again and again and again. The Eskimos make it into schools. We're learning all about Eskimos. And then the Europeans move and take over Russia, right? And then they say, oh, it's a Cold War. It was a Cold War because the Europeans were moving deeper and deeper and deeper into Eskimo territory. So many indigenous people were being killed that there was a blackout, and they just blacked out Western communication. But the Europeans in Russia are Europeans. The Europeans in Ukraine are Europeans. The Europeans in America are Europeans. The Europeans in Australia are Europeans. The Europeans in New Zealand are Europeans. And all of the Europeans are European nationalists, or they wouldn't be anywhere. They'd be here, struggling in some kind of way, living in their vehicle. So never forget that those European wars do not belong on American public radio. They are family business for Europeans. Okay. Murder for having the wrong opinion. That's what heresy is, right? You get murdered for having the wrong opinion. That's what's happening to January 6th. Not really murder literally, but murder figuratively. That's what's happening to Alex Jones. Murder for telling the truth. Murder for having your own opinion. It's kind of what's happening to me ever since I've been going. Ever since Northwestern University made sure I would graduate late with a low GPA for winning in court against European nationalism in their Harrington Appeal Court. Ever since I first started to stick up for myself, I've had the Europeans murder me for having an opinion, murder me for having critical thought, murder me for not towing the line and supporting European nationalist racism against my own self. So linguistics has a lot of power. And when you have people using secret coded languages like the United Nations, you'll think that that's something about uniting nations, but it's about uniting European nationalists in every nation. It's not about uniting different races of people in harmony and equality and happiness. And that's what America is. Linguistics is the way we transmit our experiences. And when we've got experts ready to murder for the wrong opinion, then we've got repression of thought, behavior, and repression of our future and our potential. And those, my friends, are things that I find to be anti-American. Thank you for joining me. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. Okay? Don't forget, because I'm not going to live here all my life. I'm planning to be out of here before the summer's over. And I need enough money to move. And the way I can get money is by getting 480 I need 480 more subscribers to this channel before I can even begin to monetize the channel and offer products and things like that. So please like, share, put me in a post. I put you in a post a lot of times. Put me in a post and like and share and comment. And I'll see you the next time that I come in with one of my shows, either Commander Runningcloud's log, where I have general information, as well as exopolitical diplomacy. I put terrorism in my head again, because we have so many exopolitical terrorists working here, including the ones living inside of me, because I'm pretty sure that it's some kind of technology, some kind of life from another planet. So I'm going to just ask my doctors and my healers to be aware of that and start to do what you can to eradicate these communities, because I can't do it by myself. They are from another planet, another dimension, and they have consciousness. That's what I was telling you when I poked it. I thought I was going to faint because it was losing consciousness, and it has attached its consciousness to mine. Okay? So it is also capable of mind control. But I think because I killed the one in my ear, that it cannot mind control me. But I also think that might have been the queen of the hive. But I'm pretty sure they're still reproducing inside of me. I'm pretty sure that in my ankle where the Morgellons settled, there's still a sentient being living in my leg. I'm pretty sure. When you think about the scale of life, that we've got giants and we've got microbes. Well, we've got gnats and we've got dragonflies, right? So who's to say that there is not some form of life that actually lives inside a human body, reproduces inside a human body, and goes through stages of its existence from egg to adult, from egg to larva to pupa, from adult. And who's to say that the eggs don't start in your gut and migrate to your ear, or they become pupa? And then, we don't know what the life cycle is. So I hope that your research will be done soon so that you can stop experimenting with me. But I won't call it experimenting. I'll call it research, because you didn't start it. Maybe Werner von Braun did, because wasn't that their business? And here I am here in Houston, home of the Nazis, and going through the next stage of their disease system. Because I swear to God, the projectiles that they hit me with outside in April and March, they glow. I mean, they don't glow in the dark, but I see them out of the corner of my eye. I see them shining. And I can't actually see them shine, but they're hyper visible on my flesh. They're hyper visible on my flesh, but not all the time. Sometimes they seem to fade in, and then other times they seem to get very bright. So I would say that there's some sort of bioluminescence involved in it as well. Okay. And I just have to always do my health report, because I count on the extraterrestrial good ETs and the eternals here on Earth who've been here, who are healers. A lot of them are healers. A lot of them are healers. I remember when I had cancer and I was really suffering in 2017, and I went to that show and met that healer, and he saw the disease in me and healed me. By the next day, I was healed. Yeah, I won't say his name because I've said it before, but I don't want to keep saying his name because I don't want to give him that kind of popularity. But there are a lot of eternals here that are able to heal people. Some of the frequencies help, but I don't know how much contamination Google is doing with the frequencies on YouTube. They seem to be good, but I know that one of the things we should do is be sure to research and find out what kind of tampering has been done, because I know my live broadcasts get tampered with. Okay, I've gone on past the time that I said I would close, but I didn't finish my notes. I didn't finish covering my notes for the broadcast today. I didn't finish covering all my notes, but I have gone over an hour, and I know that I have to think twice before I listen to a YouTube that goes over an hour, because I have better things to do. And I know you do too. So I'm going to end on the power of linguistics. I'll just do in a different broadcast. Maybe not now. I might wait until later. I'm kind of tired right now. But I hope that you enjoyed my broadcast. I hope you understand the importance of diversity in broadcasting, in American voices, free American voices, not American voices that have been institutionalized into the European nationalist indoctrination and mind control machine. So thanks again for joining me. Please like and subscribe. I really need that support.